like to call to order the Plan and Zone Commission for the City of Davenport for Tuesday, September 4th. Please turn off your cell phones, completely off, as they bleed into our audio system. Before we get started, I would like to introduce a new member of the staff, Brandon Melton. Would you like to come up and say a few words? Tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Brandon Melton. I come from Bi-State Regional Commission. I was there for about 7 years, working on mainly transportation planning and some community planning there, and enjoyed the community planning aspect. I liked working with member governments, so this opportunity came up and thought it was a good one. So I decided to apply and was accepted, and yeah, things have been great so far, delving into the new zoning ordinance and digesting that. So hopefully bring some good things with me from my experiences, and looking forward to serving the community.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Our first case tonight, public hearing for case. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Roll call, please.
Connell?
Yes, here.
Hepner?
Here.
Ingram's excused. Johnson?
Present.
Lammers?
Present.
Manus?
Here.
Med?
Here.
Quinn?
Here.
Reinhart's?
Here.
Tallman here. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Tallman. First case tonight is public hearing for case number REZ 18-14, request to rezone 1.49 acres MOL of property located at 4435 East 53rd Street from R2 Low Density Dwelling District to PDD Planned Development District. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to talk in favor of this public hearing? Is there anyone that's opposed? Any commissioners have, staff?
We do have a request by the applicant to table this to the September 18th meeting, but we suspect if you choose to table it to kind of leave the public hearing open, just for advertising purposes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to table this to the September 18th Plan and Zone Commission meeting and leave the public hearing open.
Do we have to have a roll call on that? Yeah. All in favor of tabling this until the 18th of January? September?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, that hearing is tabled. The next case is ROW 18-03, request of the City of Davenport for the vacation abandonment of 7.11 square feet, more or less, of alley right-of-way located northeast of Ridgewood Avenue and northwest of Middle Road. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this?
Mind if I go first?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry,
Thank
Ryan.
you. Thank you. Ryan Rusnak, Community Planning, Economic Development Department. We may have a member of Public Works here that can shed light on a little bit of the issue with respect to city resources, but the request that we have today, and there's a map of the location, really is a result of disputing neighbors between the property owners at the terminus of the alley. The area is not of sufficient width in order to have a parking stall off the terminus of the alley. No driveway approach has been permitted by the city. We looked at historical maps, and if you look at the bottom, there is actually where a detached garage is located for the property owner. In this location right here. So it's the city's position that this area was never designed for vehicular parking. We've had instances where there has been parking in this area, but the adjoining property owners tried to resolve this, and I think we're unable to come to any resolution. So the city's position is now to request to vacate this. We did send notices to 26 property owners surrounding the alley vacation. Not the petitioner, the city's petitioner. The landowner here, as well as their attorney, are objecting to the request. You may have saw correspondence that I forwarded this morning requesting that it be tabled. My response and what I'll say to the commission is that the city at this point is not in favor of the tabling. They'll have another public meeting on the 18th, and they are afforded an opportunity to speak at that, as well as the public hearing today, as well as 6 opportunities to speak in front of the city council for this request. So this is quite lengthy of a process to see if the city council would ultimately approve it and vacate it. And so if ultimately approved, the thought was to basically split this in half and convey property to each property owner. So this is a public hearing, so staff doesn't have any recommendation at this point. We will come back with a recommendation on the 18th.
Okay, any commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Lamers.
If you split, if it moves forward as you indicate, does that resolve the issue by splitting that?
I don't have a crystal ball. I mean, it may not solve disputes between property owners. I don't know what I think it would solve is the potential for that property owner driving over that alley to access their property.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else, any other commissioner would like to? Regan? Commissioner.
Is there, I guess, never mind, you already answered the question. There's not enough room for a parking slab on that corner lot property?
Yes, so basically the alley terminates at the property. The minimum code requirement for a parking slab is 8.5 feet in width, and there's not sufficient area for that. Moreover, I think the city has never issued a driveway approach permit, so there shouldn't be any parking back there. But it's the city staff's understanding that the property owner has continued to park back in that area.
If the area was to be split up 3 ways, is there enough way to give a little tiny piece of that end portion to or would it basically block the other?
To see, but essentially this property owner's land comes like this.
Right.
And then, so if you're in a situation of giving land, you're basically would be giving property that is directly adjacent to these 2 property owners. And so it was staff's opinion that it should just be divided in half and given to these 2 property owners, just because this comes at a corner there. There'd be really no purpose to convey land, in the city's opinion, to this property owner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of this petition?
Hello, my name is Katie Freilich, and I live at 2516 Middle Road, which is to the right of the alley situation. What has been happening is in February 2017, our neighbor bought a house, the house that is on the corner of Ridgewood and Middle, and his realtor had told him that he could park in the middle of the driveway. We have 3 children, and we drive a minivan, and our spot is very tight back there as it is, and our other neighbors too have a spot where they park a vehicle. So we informed Mr. Bach that it is just too tight. So it's his house, and then at first it was the end of the alley, 2 stairs down, and then it was his property. So we kept asking him to stop, and he continued to park. He would leave his vehicle there. I got involved with Gary Stats to get a sign up in the alley because the police officer is saying we have no idea if he's telling the truth or not. So I was in contact with Gary Stats, and he got us a sign. And then also with Sergeant Stevens to inform him that you cannot be using that spot as a parking spot. It's just too tight. And then in May, he started building a driveway. So the 2 stairs, now he has a ramp coming up onto the driveway. So instead of grass and fenced off, he built a ramp that is not permitted. So now what he's doing is he's driving over our property, going on and moving things so he could access this. And city officials have informed him that you can use it for long-term storage, but not coming and going. We went through mediation with the city of Davenport to try and resolve this before coming to this point where he was not receptive, he did not sign the documentation, and has since continued to park. So us and our other neighbor on the other side of Ridgewood have always been kind of talking about this together. So our plan would then be to build a fence so that there would be no way that he could access his driveway or even park there to load and unload, hoping that that would resolve the problem. And again, we have 3 little kids, so it's also scary if he's going to be coming and going in such a tight area if our kids are outside playing. So it's a safety, property kind of issue for our family.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this petition? Please come forward and state your name, please.
Hello, my name is Chris Kikari. I live at 709 Ridgewood Avenue. Katie's pretty well right what she said there. I just want to touch on a couple things. It's hard for just us to park there, let alone I park here, she parks there, so it's really hazardous. Couple Saturdays, about 3 Saturdays in a row, he squeaks by with the trailer, about hits us. I confront him and say, why don't you tell us we can at least move? He says, I got insurance. And I just told him, nobody wins through insurance. And I also noticed at that point, he's constantly moving our blocks or rocks that we have there, decorative rocks. His only access is 7 feet, and he could barely get a car in there. And that's during the summer. My biggest concern is this has been going on for 2 years, and I used to work with some engineers, so I traveled a lot. She would call me in the middle of winter and say she can't get out, and she has to go to work, and so she barely squeezes out. Sometimes there's ice there. I've been taking care of the alley since I moved there, about 17 years now, and so I make sure it's salted. The city provides salt. We dig it up, have it ready for the next day. It's very dangerous in the summertime. In the winter, it's very scary because you could slide right into it. So taking care of the alley is important to me because there's times where in that alley I take care of it. I even bought a big pry bar, picked it up. I clean out there for the leaves and everything because one year I forgot to, and we had a massive rain and a flood in my whole basement. I had to redo the whole floor, everything. And that's what I kept trying to tell Mr. Brock. I said, it ain't just a parking area. It's a hazardous because where he was parking at, he would build it up. We can't put our snow there so it can drain properly. We have to put it on our sides. And I'm to my last resort with, and who was a big help for us was our alderman, Rich Kluel. We went through mitigation, and we even gave him opportunity to sign something where he could park there for 30 minutes to unload. And there's just no working with him. My biggest concern is right now, it's not the parking or anything like that. It's my family. And that's why I'm here today. I could deal with getting hit with the car and stuff, but it elevated to it's confrontational constantly. You don't know what type of gentleman you're going to get, and especially in this day and age. So my biggest concern, of course, is the parking and everything, but it's my family right now. Moving stuff on my property, just doing crazy stuff. So I appreciate anything you could do for us. If it is granted to us to share it, we will build a fence and take care of the alley, which we do already. Not once, since he's been there 2.5 years, has he shoveled or anything. Because where we park there, we have to pile it up. It's a certain way so it can drain, and that's where he parks in. If he parks there, I got to put it on my house, and it goes right into my basement. So that's pretty all I got to say, and I thank you for hearing me.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor or against this petition?
Hi, my name's Sam Freilich. I live at 2516 Middle Road. My wife Katie just spoke. I'll try to be really quick, objective. So, like Chris and my wife alluded to, the end of the alley is unfortunately just extremely tight at the end. It's difficult to see in this map, but Chris's property and our property, we both have parking slabs at the very end of the alleyway. And so in order to get in and out of those parking slabs, we really need to use the alley all the way to the almost to the end to be able to access it. So to grant a parking spot there or to even make it accessible to his property poses an extreme risk to our vehicles. Like my wife mentioned, he actually has to drive over our property, which is an easement issue, in order to access his property. And I'm sure a survey or something like that could easily find all that out for us. But it's unfortunately, just like I said, just really tight back there. We've really attempted to work with Mr. Bach as well as we possibly can to figure all this out. But you know, he does have his driveway and his garage on the road. It's unfortunate that the realtor who sold him his house told him he had alley parking, which was not the case. And I really hope that we can come to a resolution here where we can end up going down what Ryan and Rich have proposed. But I really don't see a peaceful resolution with how it stands today, just given how incredibly limited the acreage is back there. So. Like I said, just try to be short and sweet, but we do appreciate all your time, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, okay. When he's done.
Good afternoon. My name's Rich Oswald. I'm the Director of Neighborhood Services for the City of Davenport. Just some background on this issue, there has been 12 calls for service from the police department regarding parking and alley access and issues amongst the three neighbors. And going out and looking at the properties, they are very constricted and confined. The alley comes to a point there. Mr. Bach originally inquired about getting a curb cut permit to put a drive in. The city utility inspectors denied the permit because of the footage that was not there. You have to have 8.5 feet. There's just a little under 8 foot there, and the car cannot directly drive onto the parking pad. At that time, Mr. Bach stated he was just going to pour a patio, not use it for parking. So the curb cut permit was denied. That was agreed upon by the city engineer, Brian Shad, that there should not be a curb cut permit put in there. In working with the aldermen and the neighbors, we tried a mediation session where the Frolics and Kakaris gave some concessions to share usage of the alley, which Mr. Bach did not want to agree to. So there's been a continuing issue there. It's been a lot of staff time concerning this alley, and in talking with Ryan Rusnick from zoning, and that we feel this is the best solution to solve sort of the alley dispute issue.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Reinertz?
Thank you. Right, if we vacate this, or if we approve it, ultimately then the alley will become the private property of the two residents that share this back alley.
That would be correct. So we would
So
retain.
then it becomes a private property issue.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay,
We would retain an easement for the utilities that are located in there.
for the utilities, but ultimately it becomes a private property issue. Okay,
That's
fine,
correct.
thank
And I think that's what Mr. Oswald was alluding to. There's been a lot of city resources dedicated to trying to mediate this dispute between ongoing neighbors, and I would assume at that point it would just become a trespass issue.
All right, fine, just kind of moves it from one department to another.
The city's already involved in it, has been for quite some time.
Okay, fine,
I'm
thank
sorry,
you very
the
much.
police.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tallman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ryan, in our next packet, would it be possible to get maybe an at-grade view of a picture of this? Just these aerials are good, and, I mean, they help,
Yep.
but hearing a lot of talk about how it kind of gets pretty narrow down there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Did they want to, did they want to table this? Ryan did you say something about tabling this?
So the Mr. Bach and his attorney, Mr. Bach is currently on vacation, and so I received some emails this morning that they were out of town, didn't have ample time to prepare, and that possibly the attorney would not be able to be present. My response to them was, this is a public hearing. There's another opportunity in 2 weeks for the public to speak on this, as well as 6 times for them to speak at city council. So the city at this point is not in favor of tabling, and so my suggestion is to close the public hearing, and this commission can vote on it on September 18th.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh. Rex, come on up.
We're going to ask if there's anyone speaking in opposition to this resolution.
Well, I said in favor or
Okay, all right.
in opposition, but
My name's Rex Ridenour. I'm a lawyer. I'm here on behalf of Alex Bach, the other property owner. We did request that this matter be tabled, essentially for 2 reasons. One, I don't like to be in a position where I'm speaking about something I might say is not necessarily factual as I believe it to be, and I don't know a lot of what's going on. I've heard some things this afternoon for the first time. I haven't never had an opportunity to discuss the matter with representatives of the city. I think that would have been a good place to start. I suggested that in a letter in June 21st to my client, which I believe he forwarded the city, and we were told at that time that it had been kicked upstairs and that no further discussions. So that's where we're coming from. I think there is a problem. There's a very small area for people to park. I don't think the correct way to solve that problem is to take away the property rights of one of the landowners. It is a public alley. I noticed in some of the information I had an opportunity to look at concerning the city's publication was that the problem was that it seemed that the alley went through the backyards of the 2 property owners, which I believe is kind of the definition of an alley. Mr. Bach, as they've indicated, bought this property with the understanding that he had access to the property from the alley. Now, it's not the city's fault that he was told that, apparently, but I think it is, if the city arbitrarily removes that access, maybe that is the city's fault. Removing that access, the topography of this particular lot, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but this is the lot that when you're going up Middle Road in Davenport, it's the one with the little garage sitting all by itself down on Middle Road, and then there's a large number of steps going up. There's no way any person with any kind of disability can get up those steps. The only real access for any person with any kind of disability is through the public alley on the rear. Now, what Mr. Bach, and again, one of the reasons I hesitate to have this hearing tonight is I hate to say things that I'm not positive about, and I haven't really had an opportunity to speak with my client about it since this came out over the Labor Day weekend, which is when I was out of town, and I checked my email and I found out there was going to be a public hearing tonight. But it's my understanding, and maybe someone can correct me, that Mr. Bach is really the only one that's taken any action to try to solve this problem. One, he went to the city and said, "Can I pour a parking pad?" They said, "Yeah, you don't need a permit for that." He poured a parking pad, and then they said, "Oh, but we're going to fine you $100 every time you drive over the curb." He said, "Well, can I get a permit to cut the curb?" "No, you can't have a permit to cut the curb." It's my understanding his neighbor has a curb cut. Who did it? Whether they had a permit, I don't know. That's one of the things I don't know. I do know that he had the property surveyed, and as a result of that survey, there was some encroachment on his property, and we required the property owner, the neighbor, to remove that. Someone removed the pins, his survey pins. Mr. Bach remains convinced that his driveway approach is in fact the proper width. Whether it is or not, again, that's an issue that I don't know. But it's something that I think could better be resolved, maybe at the staff level, before we get to the position where we're trying to vacate and take property rights away from Mr. Bach. You know, as we all know, there's a bundle of rights involved in ownership of property. One of them is access. And again, I'm thinking out loud here a little bit, but maybe you're going to have to condemn if you want to take his access away. Not having access, not having real access to the rear of that property. What it may do to the market value of that property, I don't know, but I think it's going to be significant. I don't really want his mortgage holder to find out that all of a sudden he doesn't have access to the rear of that property. I just think there are a lot of issues here, and Mr. Bach is a very young man. He's impetuous, like a lot of young men are. I'm sure he wasn't always the most favorable person to deal with. But I will say this, he's a very ambitious young man, he's a very industrious young man, and he's the type of young person that we would like to keep in the Quad Cities. Again, I don't think this problem, it's like taking the sledgehammer to kill a fly, is removing, it's a public alley, it abuts his property, he's entitled to use it, he has a legal right to use it, he doesn't object to the other parties using it, all he asks them to do is leave him room to access his own property. I think the and maybe it's something that should be taken up with the Board of Adjustment. I think the solution of this problem is to allow him to park on his parking pad right next to his house, which he poured to great expense after the city told him, as I'm told, that yeah, you can pour the pad. You don't need a permit for that. When it was poured, well, no, you can't use it, and we won't give you a curb cut, and we'll fine you every time you drive over it. That irritates young people. I guess one thing I'd like to clarify and see if there's an agreement as concerns the protest. As far as I'm concerned, we have 3 properties that are included in the properties affected. So if we protest, we need the supermajority. Is that correct?
No, that's applicable to rezonings, not right-of-way vacations.
Okay, we'll see. So what is applicable to right-of-way vacation? Anything? Any rules? No rules? Okay. But by taking someone's right of way away, you are taking, that is a taking. And you might be subject to eminent domain. Are you thinking of that?
That assumes he has a bundle of rights that includes vehicular access there, which he doesn't.
Well, you're taking away all his access. I mean, as I stand here, there are things I don't know. I don't know where his mail's delivered.
He fronts on 2 streets.
No, he fronts on one street and and an alley. I don't know where his mail delivered. Does his mailman climb those steps every day? Do we know that?
You're addressing the commission.
Well, that's kind of why I wanted to talk to staff, have an opportunity to talk to staff. We don't know how his mail's delivered. How do they pick up his garbage?
It's in the front. His garbage is in the front,
Okay.
and he has a garage in the front.
Yeah, he has a garage in the front. I mean, his folks, you know, if we want to get down to personal items, and I appreciate small children, nobody wants to put small children at any risk. By the same token, by taking away this access, it's so greatly limiting the marketability of this house. I mean,
There will be 3 more opportunities when this goes to the city council. They'll have, at least 3 public hearings, won't they, Ryan?
An ordinance requires 3 readings, so there'll actually be 6 opportunities at council to speak, as well as another opportunity from the Plan and Zoning Commission in 2 weeks.
I think what you're telling me, you've heard enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eidenauer. Okay, anyone else would like to speak?
Hello, my name's Mary Ann Kakari, and I live at 709 Ridgewood. I do want to clarify one more time in case you didn't hear. He does have a driveway and a garage down at the front of his house. The previous owner, little lady, did those stairs every single time. And we would let her unload or whatever, not let her, but she just would unload and then move her car in the front. In the mediation, we did say that was fine. We never had a problem with unloading. But our neighbor, Alex Bach, he would take advantage of it and leave his trunk open and say he was unloading for, I don't know for longer than the 30 minutes. I mean, it was like hours. He would call the police, as you heard from Rich, that he would call the police several times saying we were in the alley, which we were on our property, as we always are. So he really does not have access to the alley, nor did the little lady that lived there before him. They never did have any access to that, so we're not taking anything away from them. So he just doesn't want to climb the stairs, and like I said, he could have always, if anybody came to see him that was disabled, they could drop him off. They walk, and he would move the car to the front and just climb up the stairs or whatever. That's how we have, when our disabled people come over. So I just want to clarify all that. But Alex has been very hard to work with. He has called my husband's employer, trying to get him in trouble because my husband has a work truck, and I don't want to go too much into that, but he's just very hard to work with. And so when my husband says he's confrontational, he is. But in the mediation, he had a chance to sign that because we were all trying to work in this so it wouldn't come to this point. But I hope you do think about all the things that we're saying here and agree upon this sale, or however you want to word it. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this will come back before us. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Hepner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff, is there a curb and gutter down this alley?
My recollection, because of the grade changes, there tends to be some retaining walls, and there is in some portions that appear to be installed by property owners, kind of a concrete curb, what appears to be. But there's a a storm drain at the very end of the alley, and so it just tends to sheet flow and direct it towards the storm drain at the end.
So that's where this all comes to a head, is at the drain right there at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. There's literally like a storm drain right at the end of the alley
Thank you.
with the curb. That's right. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no one else, we'll close this public hearing, and it'll come back before us on September 18th. And that's when we'll vote on a recommendation to send it to City Council. And that ends our public hearing. We'll move on now to our regular meeting. Roll call, please.
Connell.
Present.
Hepner.
Here.
Ingram's excused. Johnson.
Present.
Lammers.
Present.
Manus.
Here.
Med.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Reinhardt.
Here.
Tolman here. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Secretary's report.
Move the report.
The report has been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Report of the Comprehensive Plan Committee. Anything new?
Nothing to report.
Okay. We'll move on to the zoning activity. Commissioner Med.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This evening we have two cases. The first is case REZ 18-12, request of Chris Townsend on behalf of Jimmy Holt to rezone 1.43 acres, more or less, of property located at 3730 West Locust Street from C1 Neighborhood Commercial and R3 Moderate Density Dwelling District to PDD Planned Development District. Staff recommends the Plan and Zoning Commission accept the listed finding and forward case REZ 18-12 to the City Council with a recommendation of approval subject to the three listed conditions. And I so move.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any questions from the commissioners?
Yeah, I really don't have much other than just for self-storage units. The one thing I will note is large areas designated residential general on the future land use map. That was something that kind of jumped to our mind during the request. Here's the language from that, but it talks about you can have neighborhood commercial compatible uses closer to a neighborhood edge, which West Locust Street would be. Certainly pushing much further from West Locust in this area. And so what we then looked at is the design of the property. Could that be compatible with the surrounding area of the property? Because we do have a PDD request, as well as some of the three conditions that staff recommended. It was staff's opinion that the proposed use would be compatible with the surrounding area. So not having garage doors face out towards the street, beginning the self-storage units back 150 feet, as well as having a fence there. We did have a neighborhood meeting on August 6th. We had about 15 people attend, and there has been no objections so far. I think most people that came were just curious about the proposed development. So. Here are the listed conditions recommended by staff. Thank you.
Commissioners have any questions? Seeing no one, roll call, please.
Hepner.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Lammers.
Yes.
Manus.
Yes.
Med.
Yes.
Quinn.
Yes.
Reinhardt.
Yes.
Tolman, yes. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Move on to the next.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I should have mentioned earlier there was no old business. This is all new
Yeah.
business. So, the second case is case REZ 18-13 of Hawkeye Paving for the rezoning of 30.7 acres, more or less, of real property located at 8228 North Farman Street, Fairmount Street, former Wacky Waters site, from A1 Agricultural District to M1 Light Industrial District to facilitate development of contractor headquarters shop and equipment storage. Staff recommends the Plan and Zoning Commission forward case REZ 18-13 to the City Council for approval, and I so move.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded.
Scott Copes, Community Planning. If you'll recall from our public hearing, the site is surrounded by other industrial rezoned properties. They're all zoned M1. The petitioner is also asking for M1 here. Across the 80, we also have some M1 and a little bit more A1 as well. And if you have any questions, just let me know, but our recommendation is in favor.
Any questions from the commissioners? If not, roll call, please.
Johnson,
Yes.
Lammers,
Yes.
Manus,
Yes.
Med,
Yes.
Quinn,
Yes.
Yes.
Reinhardt, Tallman, yes, and Hepner.
Yes.
Motion carries.
That ends my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Med. Subdivision activity, Commissioner Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two cases tonight. The first being request ROW 18-02 of City of Davenport for the vacation abandonment of public right-of-way along the 5,000 block of Forest Grove Court east to the corporate limits containing 1.47 acres more or less. Staff recommends the Planning and Zoning Commission accepts the listed findings and forward case ROW 18-02 to the City Council with a recommendation for approval, subject to the recording of a public utility easement for any remaining utilities, and I so move.
Mr. Chairman, I need to excuse myself from this case.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah, Scott Copes, Community Planning. If you have any questions, just please let me know, but we're recommending in favor. The road has been relocated up further north, and there's no need for the right-of-way anymore.
Any questions from the commissioners? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Lammers,
Yes.
Manus,
Yes.
Med abstains, Quinn,
Yes.
Reinhardt,
Yes.
Tallman, yes, Hepner,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner Tallman.
My second case tonight is case P18-05, request of Kerry Condon on behalf of Pine Partners LLC for a preliminary plat for a 63-lot subdivision located west of Division Street and north of West 55th Street. Staff recommends that the Plan and Zoning Commission accept the listed findings and forward case P18-05 to the City Council with a recommendation for approval subject to the three listed conditions, and I so approve, and I so move.
Just here for any questions if you have any.
Any questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Manus,
Yes.
Med,
Yes.
Quinn,
Yes.
Reinhardt,
Yes.
Tallman, yes, Hepner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
and Lammers.
Yes.
Motion carries.
That is the end of my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I don't see anything on there for future business.
That's correct.
Okay, no communications.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned.